Bacon Hooper, the colossalist of all the Titans, the largest of boys, but also the smallest of backbones, the weakest resolve, the worst game. I've always been fascinated by how badass the Colossal Titan was and how it almost seemingly didn't fit the character it was attached to. Bertolt Hoover, for lack of a better name, is a character I've given a lot of crap over the years for how much I just hate this character. Now, don't get me wrong, his writing is good, but much like how people say they hate Gabby because she is annoying or because Flock is annoying, this is my version of that. I think Bertolt is one of the most annoying characters in this series, but as always, I like to put my money where my mouth is, and so today we're going to dive deep into the character and story of Bertolt Hoover to uncover the truth behind the meekest man of Attack on Titan. As well, stick around towards the end of the video as I'll be hinting at next week's Attack on Titan video. At the beginning of the series, Mr. Blooper is very meek, often overshadowed by Reiner and even Annie in terms of personality. This would continue throughout much of the series. He is often seen as a meek and weak-willed person, falling in line with what those tell him. In other words, he's your perfect soldier, and it's no wonder Marley chose him, as it's allowed for them to directly control what is essentially a walking tactical nuke, though we'll get more into that later. As for now, Burnt Toast, when he joins the 104th, is actually an elite soldier in the Survey Corps, ranking amongst the highest, and especially one of the best when it comes to his use of movement gear. He is, in fact, so good at maneuvering and using it that he is approached by Eren Yeager when he had trouble mastering his movement gear. This is our first glimpse into the layers of his character that hide just beneath the surface. This as well is actually what makes him unique, because his strengths lie not in what you see, but in what you don't see and is subtly implied. For example, Bear Cold believes that with the now proven fake story of him running from Titans makes him a coward. But in reality, it's Eren who makes a point by saying he wouldn't be a coward for running as he was only trying to preserve his life. After all, you only get one shot, and within the context of the story and outside of it, there are no issues with him running, so that he may fight another day. Even Eren, who at this point in the story is fully on board with revenge, would not be dumb enough to pull such a thing. This is because Burrito has good instincts despite what we see of him on the surface, and this is further explained in Season 2 before he and Reiner take on Eren. A major turning point in understanding Bertato's character was at Utgard Castle and the subsequent interactions with Ymir afterward. We learned that despite his actions and role in this war between the Titan Shifters, he is actually much more kind-hearted than one would expect. He realizes how much suffering he has put many people through, and despite him seemingly being detached, the reality is that he is much more conflicted on the inside. And honestly, how could you not be? A person like him was molded to be the perfect colossal titan, docile, impressionable. That being said, I don't think this makes Bertolt dumb either. He understands completely the toll his actions have taken on others and just how much this has affected everything. So in other words, he's not just complicit, he's aware of his complicity, and that's what both damns his character and at the same time makes us understand his side of things all too well. A further example of this is his relationship with Reiner and Annie. Both are people he greatly respects and stands up for often, in particular, Reiner. He's often seen with him, and it's no mistake as to why. He feels a great connection to both of them and wants to protect them, especially against the insurmountable odds of being undercover as Survey Corps soldiers. In many ways, they're brothers in arms, after all, even if they're on the wrong side. That being said, he is often the voice of reason in the group, which isn't that surprising if you think about it. Being such a quiet and reserved person who often just blends in despite his height and stature, he is able to easily observe people and make judgment calls much easier than, say, Reiner would. Because of this, there were clear moments where, trying to keep the mission alive, would advise Reiner from lowering his guard in fear of compromising or tipping the enemy off. With Annie, it was more or less the same, except he didn't have to tell Annie much, as she was far more self-sufficient and smart, just to be honest, though he would often stand up for them both equally. That being said, as time went on, Bork changed because his hopelessness would eventually wear away the same care he had for his comrades and himself. What was the detached man who still cared eventually just grew to not at all. Much like how Reiner grew to have a split personality, there was a similar effect for Myrtle where he stopped caring about his comrades the way he did before because of the betrayal of the Survey Corps and the murder of Marco. His death affected everyone there deeply and forever made this man cold and detached to such a degree that even Armin using Annie against him has no meaning or effect. Even the girl that he liked and had a crush on had no change on his feelings. At this point, the man who was more like a shadow became less than a shadow, maybe more of like a hollow stand-in. Even Reiner, the man who would always be around and support, was seemingly abandoned by Blorg. This can only be described to me as a complete loss of his own person. This man, as of this moment, is but a ghost. So what happened? What went wrong? In so many words, the tragedy of Berthold is a perfect example of a delicate man broken down by the gears of war. Like a meat grinder, he was chewed up and spit out into something that could be molded for war, and the man that was Berthold just wasn't built for that. He tried desperately to support Reiner and Annie at every chance, but after he was forced to murder Marco, everything changed from that moment. What was needed of him to wage this war was essentially complicity, and that in of itself broke him and caused himself to close off nearly completely. What's even worse is he realized this himself, but what could he do? What he was going through was a living nightmare of being the colossal titan where he would die young and miserably. He would have to end up slaughtering his friends he grew attached to for a tyrannical government and military. What could he do other than make a desperate attempt to rationalize everything as matter of fact, to save what was left of his crumbling mental health and life? In other words, nothing could help him. Not the promise of the war ending, not the deaths of his comrades, nor the love of Annie could stop what would happen. After all, this was all fated to happen in his head anyways. For him, it was inevitable. This would lead to the eventual death of Berthold when he would go face to face with Eren and Aramin in an epic showdown. In this battle, he would eventually lose, as Armin would try to sacrifice his life as a way to get him to expel so much steam that he would have to either leave his weakened titan or simply just retreat. This would work as Eren was able to finally get his revenge for his mother and people by taking down the colossal titan once and for all. Though it would come at a cost, as now the dilemma of choosing between the life of Erwin and Armin loomed over them, and still does to this day, as Armin is the one chosen to become the colossal titan. Being fed to a titanized Armin, Berthold's last words are simply the screams of begging to be saved by Reiner and Annie. And I find it interesting how a man that wasn't afraid of death or murdering others was at the end of his life someone who was terrified of dying. I'm of two thoughts about his death though. On one hand, I think this shows how Berthold was wrong in the way he thought. This idea that his path was set in place was so obviously not true. But at the same time, he was a product of his environment, and so was that thought process. He couldn't stand up for himself or step out of the shadow that he was caged in. The cold and harsh truth of the Titan Shifters is they all chose the wrong decision, leading to their ultimate downfalls. And I can't blame them. Berthold is no different, and he is by far someone who became too complacent in his role, accepting what was given to him. But at the same time, I don't blame him for the way he turned out either. I can see why he felt hopeless in the situation despite the Titan that he wielded, despite having the explosive capability to flatten entire cities. The reality is that the man himself couldn't stand up for himself. His detached state, his weak-willed nature, these were all traits which ended up playing against himself. But there is something else that made him even more susceptible to his own life. he didn't have a goal. If we look to Reiner, he wants to become an honorary Marleyan and find inner peace. Annie wants to return to her father and will do anything to get him back. Bertolt had nothing, because Bertolt is nothing. He isn't a person. He's a hollow cutout to put in anything you want to, and that's what makes Bertolt the perfect weapon, but the weakest link. Because who is Bertolt? Well, Bertolt is whatever his environment necessitates, the ultimate complicit, which makes him, ultimately, the undesired neutral. And that's the end of the video. And I must say, I didn't expect to get as much as I did out of making it, but by the end, I think I understand Bertolt's character so much more than I did previously. He is yet another tragic figure in the long list of tragic Attack on Titan characters. My hope is that, for those watching this video, they take away that Bertolt may be a weak-willed person, but he didn't really deserve any of this. It makes me wonder what Bertolt would have been if he were born into another life and world. That being said, it's that time again. Here is the teaser for next week's Attack on Titan video and the penultimate episode of The Titan Shifters of Attack on Titan series. This one is going to be a very good video, but no one quite knows what it could be. You'll just have to wait and see.
兵士には引けない状況がある。今がそうだ。